If you want to publish your research papers in top Scopus-Indexed journals, you really need to learn how to express your research ideas precisely, concisely, in appropriate scientific academic language. Because if you don't learn how to do this, no matter how great your research is, no matter how great your findings are, no matter how novel your contributions are, your research papers are just not going to make it to those top high impact journals. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to master academic language, how to express your research ideas concisely, how to be more precise, how to be more scientific, more academic, more formal with your writing, so that you can get your papers to those best journals. So let's dive right in and let's get started. We're in module 1, lecture 4, and in this module, in this lecture, we're going to talk about the principles of structure and flow. So by the end of this lecture, you will know exactly how to tell a coherent story in your journal papers, in your thesis, whatever it is that you're writing. And I'll teach you sort of universal principles that you can apply across different disciplines, across different academic texts to really tell a coherent story. And you know, the lack of coherent story is probably one of the things that I suppose we hear from our prospective clients most of the time as a lack in the papers, in the thesis. Many supervisors, many reviewers complain that there is no coherent story in your paper or in your thesis. Maybe you've heard that yourself below. However, the problem is that most supervisors or reviewers don't really know how to explain what a coherent story is. So this is what this video is for. I want to explain to you exactly how to tell a coherent story and what the principles of structure and flow are, so then you can apply them to any academic text that you're writing. So with that said, let's take a look at what we're going to cover today. So first of all, we're going to look at the importance of foundations, and then we're going to look at the inverted pyramid structure, how it works in different sections, in a thesis, in journal papers, and so on. And I'm going to show you as well how to apply principles of flow and structure within paragraphs and across paragraphs. Because paragraphs are really the building blocks of your text, and if you can write good paragraphs and maintain links between them, then you'll be halfway there when it comes to telling a coherent story. And most of the time, in our experience of having worked with over 460 PhD students and researchers, when it comes to telling a coherent story, most people understand overall how to structure a journal paper, let's say, and most people get that overall structure right. The problems start on smaller levels, on paragraphs and maintaining flow across paragraphs. So that's why we're going to also talk about that. Okay, so let's talk about laying the foundations and a rock solid structure and how to build that so that you can really build something that lasts. And we're going to talk about the importance of laying those foundations first. So why do foundations matter? Because otherwise you're building a beautiful house on a swamp, and no matter how beautiful you make it, it's going to collapse, either during or right after you build it. So no matter how beautiful the scientific language is that you're using, how beautiful your scientific ideas are, if you don't have the structure right, they're going to collapse. They'll mean nothing, and the reviewers will rip your paper apart. So that's why foundations are really important. And they also give you a clear map, because imagine, think of a paper as a dense forest that you're trying to go through without any map, without proper directions. Well, you will get lost, you will lose time, it will be frustrating, and you might never get to the final destination. That's why foundations are so important, because they give you a clear map of what to do. And then it helps you to achieve clarity and purpose, because it's much easier to plan your journey once you have a map, once you know where you're going. Otherwise, you're kind of completely in the dark and you don't really know what you're doing and you can't plan anything, right? Okay, so overall here we're going to be following the inverted pyramid structure. and you're going to see me refer to it throughout different modules of published researcher and throughout different sections of journal papers, chapters in thesis. It's just going to be a principle that we're going to be using very, very often. So that's why I want to give it to you here as a foundational principle for structure and flow. And really just think of it as an inverted pyramid with the pyramid apex at the bottom and then the base of the pyramid at the top. So the way it works is that, we go from general to specific. We always start with the general idea, the overall topic, before we go to a specific idea, an example. So in an introduction, we usually start with the importance of the topic, maybe the definition of the key term, before we go to the literature, the gap, and the aim. We don't start with the aim because that's a very specific idea. And we go from general to specific. That's how the inverted pyramid works. We also want to have stepping stones, and I'll explain that later on in this video, but you want to introduce key ideas and discuss them in the order you introduce them. Such as in this sentence, we've got differences in study year, gender, and medical specialties. So the most logical thing that you should do is in the next sentence first talk about study year, and then gender, and then medical specialties. It would be completely illogical in the next sentence to talk about medical specialties. So yeah, you want to have those steps that that the reader can clearly follow and that build your structure really well. And then pyramid apex. So, that's the sort of the top of the pyramid, right? That's where you're going. That's where everything, the whole structure is going. So at the end of each paragraph, at the end of a section, what you want to ask yourself is, for example, so what? What am I trying to tell the reader here? What is the main takeaway message? And that's a question I often ask myself when I read paragraphs, when I read journal papers from our clients. And if I can't answer that question, immediately, the text becomes descriptive. And if you have been told that your texts are too descriptive, that's one of the main reasons why, because you're not answering that so what question. And let's see that in an example where there is no pyramid apex. So you'll see a paragraph, read it and see how you feel about it. Ask yourself, so what? Right? You just kind of read it and you really go, yeah, but so what? What are you trying to tell me here? I don't know. You've just presented a study, you've described it, but then what's your point? Okay, and that's a mistake I see time and time again researchers make in their paper. So you want to avoid that mistake. Instead, you want to say something like this, and then in the last sentence, drive the message home. What are you trying to tell the reader? In this case, the writer is arguing something specific. There could be a different pyramid apex, but the point is that there is an answer to the so what question. There is a key takeaway message. It's not just a description of something. There's a clear argument in this case that the writer is proposing, and that's what you want to do in paragraphs, in sections of your writing, to really build that coherent story and build that argument throughout. Now, I mentioned the idea of stepping stones. So like this, inverted Mayan pyramid that has, steps to get to the top, you also want to build steps like that so that the reader can more easily get to the pyramid apex at the end. So first of all, you want to follow established order. So there is an established order from general to specific that you should follow. Breaking it, can just cause confusion for the reader, because the reader is not used to a different order. So to give you an example from the introduction of a paper or a thesis, typically what we do, we cannot present your aim before you presented the gap, because the gap kind of is more general than the aim. The gap is a stepping stone to the aim. And you cannot present the gap before you review the literature, because the literature is a stepping stone to the aim. And the literature cannot really be briefly reviewed before you define the key topic and its importance, because that's the stepping stone to the literature review. Okay, so there is an established order that you need to follow if you want to tell a coherent story. And then you also want to maintain order. So I've mentioned that idea before, but if you introduce 3 or 4 ideas, well, then discuss them in that order in which you introduce them. And you might think, well, that's just such an obvious idea. Well, it is, but you would be surprised how many people don't follow this and don't maintain the order, and as a result aren't telling a coherent story. A lot of people make this mistake, so you don't want to be making it. Maintain order. Now, you also want to go step by step. Jumping steps isn't advisable because you can just fall down the pyramid and break your neck, and that would be painful. So the way to go step by step is, for example, you want to talk about idea A first in full, so like A, and then move to idea B. Don't jump between steps or ideas. So don't go A, B, A, C, B, A, because that's just confusing, If you have one idea A, discuss it fully, be it in a paragraph or maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs, depending how long you need, and then go to idea B, and then discuss idea B fully, and then go to idea C. Okay, that's how it works. Don't go like A, B, C, B, A, because that's just confusing. And then you want to cement steps together. This will bind your pyramid structure together, and it will be easier for the reader to get to the pyramid apex. For example, you can end a paragraph with an introduction of the main idea of the following paragraph. So one paragraph could end with saying, which may lead to overheating in the summer. Well, then we know that the following paragraph will be about overheating in the summer. And if it isn't, then it's just illogical. It has to be about overheating in the summer, because that's the idea that was introduced at the end of the previous paragraph. You can also start a paragraph with a reference back to the key idea of the previous paragraph. Like you can say, an additional challenge for lithium batteries is. So then we know that the previous paragraph was about a challenge. Okay? And if it wasn't, then something is wrong with your text. It's completely illogical. Okay? So the beginning of a paragraph refers back to the previous paragraph. And then of course you can also use linking words, and there are other devices that you can use, like determiners and pronouns, that we'll talk about when we talk about paragraphs. But keep that in mind. Cementing steps is crucial to tell a coherent story. Now, this was sort of like a high-level principle, but let's look at how the inverted pyramid structure actually works in chapters and of your PhD thesis or in sections of journal papers. So if we look at the introduction, again, keep the inverted pyramid in mind. We usually start with highlighting the importance of the topic, maybe giving a definition of the key term, and then we briefly review the literature, identify the research gap or problem, state the aim, and present the organization. Okay, so you can see how we go from general, like the importance of the topic, to very specific, like the aim. That the aim is really the so what, it's our pyramid apex in the introduction. In the literature review, we very often introduce the main theme and the key concept of that literature review section, let's say. Then we review specific aspects of that main theme. So we go more specific. We might provide examples of those specific aspects. So again, more specific. And then we probably might identify some gaps in the literature, because that's really the whole point of the literature review, to identify gaps and then give justification to your study. So again, general to specific, inverted pyramid. Results. You usually introduce the first main result, you provide data supporting the result, and then you state what the result means. That's the usual structure. You don't really state what the result means and then give us data supporting it. That would be illogical. You first introduce the main result, provide data, and then you might state what that actually means. And then discussion. It also works in the same way. So we present the main result, compare with previous findings, and then offer explanations or interpret that result. Again, inverted pyramid, general to specific. Conclusion, the same. We restate the main topic, we summarize the key results, we suggest practical implications, and present limitations and make suggestions for future research. Again, general to specific, inverted pyramid, okay? So that's how it works in practice in different sections of journal papers. And what you want to do is also, read the papers from your discipline to notice that structure and notice examples of inverted pyramid. When you start paying attention to it, you will start noticing the inverted pyramid everywhere in your papers. I promise you, it's everywhere. You just need to start paying attention to it. Now, let's look at the building blocks of the inverted pyramid structure, which are paragraphs. And again, paragraphs are very, very important because, as I said, as much as many PhD students and researchers do get the overall structure, let's say, of a journal paper right, usually they know this first an introduction, then the methodology, and so on. Where the problems really start in terms of telling a coherent story, it's paragraphs, and it's like complete lack of coherence within paragraphs, across paragraphs, and therefore sort of within sections of a journal paper. So the problems with telling a coherent story that you might be having are usually at the paragraph level and sort of between paragraphs in a section. That's what we want to work on. This is hugely important. So first of all, you want to start with a topic sentence that summarizes the main idea of your paragraph. And then you will develop that main idea from general to specific. And then a paragraph should be about one main idea that's clearly expressed in the topic sentence. Now, that main idea can have two supporting ideas, let's say. Okay, so there can be in that one paragraph, maybe you're going to give two consequences of something. But that's still one main idea. It's just that it's got two supporting ideas within it. Okay, so that's a very important principle. And then the length, it should be between 4 and 9 sentences or about 150 words, because sentences can differ in length. If you've got very long sentences, your paragraphs might tend to be shorter in terms of number of sentences, like 4 sentences. And if you've got very short sentences, well, then you might squeeze in like 8 sentences regularly. But you're aiming for sort of around 150 words. And, some paragraphs will be longer, some paragraphs will be shorter. That's just natural. You don't have to artificially try to extend your paragraphs so that every paragraph is 6 sentences. Don't do that, okay? But that's the approximate length you should keep in mind. Development. You want to develop the paragraph from general to specific, and you want to guide the reader to the main idea, okay? And the main idea is that main takeaway message that we talked about, okay? When you finish a paragraph, ask yourself, so what? What am I trying to tell the reader here? What is the key takeaway message? And perhaps not every single paragraph needs that would be an exaggeration, but a lot of paragraphs, especially in the introduction, the literature review, and the discussion, they do need that takeaway message. It would be different in the methodology because then you're just, kind of reporting on the methods that you used, and in the results, you're just kind of reporting on the results. But in those sections where you're trying to really create a coherent story and a coherent argument, so introduction, discussion, conclusion, we do need that takeaway message, that so what. So ask yourself that question, so what? What am I trying to tell the reader? And let's look at an example paragraph so this becomes clearer. You can pause this video if you want to read that paragraph in more detail. That's totally fine. And then I'll go over it. So we'll go over the nitty-gritty of this paragraph, like the linking words and everything, later on. But what I want you to notice is like the overall structure. Notice that it starts with a clear topic sentence that clearly outlines what the main idea is. And then that main idea is developed from general to specific. So notice that there are like sub-ideas in here, which are then supported by examples. The writer does not start with the examples. We first have main idea and then sub-idea number 1, and then an example of that. And just a quick note on this video, it comes from my program Published Researcher. And if you want to get access to all the materials that I'm showing in this program. You can actually try it for free in our free Published Researcher community, and you can get access to all the materials and resources that I'm showing in this video, and the link to join that free community is right below this video in the description. And then also notice that the paragraph ends with, you know, like a key takeaway message, that there is the so what, there is the answer to that so what question, which is very, very important. So these were some of the principles, but let's now put it into practice. And I prepared for you a paragraph structure and flow worksheet. It's available for download right below this video. I'll pull it up on the screen here for you. It looks like this. It's a Word document, and there'll be a video with instructions in here that you can watch. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in terms of the instruction, but your first task is to paste a previous paragraph that you've written recently or less recently. It's just up to you. You put it here, and then you want to analyze its overall structure and improve it and create version 2 of the paragraph. Okay, how do you analyze the structure? Well, you can follow the questions that are here, and I've given you the overall structure. We've just discussed it in the video, so that should be fresh in your mind. So pause this video right now and do this task right now, because everything that we do next will build on the version 2 of your paragraph and will make it better and better and better. So you need the version 2 right now in order to proceed with this video. So make sure that you get it done. And then I'll see you back in the presentation. Okay, now we're going to build flow within paragraphs. You've got a really nice overall structure, version 2 of your paragraph. Well, let's ensure that, you know, within the paragraphs, we've got really good flow as well. How are we going to do that? First of all, the logical structure. Of course, we start with a topic sentence, develop it from general to specific in the following sentences. And then we can introduce the key ideas we'll discuss next and present them in that very order, which is an idea that I've already mentioned to you. And you want to ask yourself, when you write the next sentence of a paragraph, ask yourself, well, what are you doing here? Are you giving an example? Are you presenting a contrasting idea? Are you adding more information? What is it that you're doing? And asking yourself that will sort of force you to understand what is the link between your two ideas. Maybe there isn't any link. And if that's the case, well, then you've got a problem and you've got to rethink the structure of your paragraph. But that's an easy way to link your ideas. And then you want to make the links explicit. You want to help the reader along by showing them connections between your ideas using linking words. Okay, there will be other ways of showing those connections, which I'm going to discuss in a second, but linking words is the easiest way, I think, of doing that. So let's take a look at our model paragraph and let's see how this is done. So again, we've got the key ideas introduced in here, which are then discussed in the paragraph. And then there are a lot of linking words here, like nevertheless, for instance, while, additionally, for example, furthermore. And this really helps build flow within the paragraph. It's just so much easier to follow the writer, because as a reader, I don't have to ask myself, like, what is she trying to say here, really? I don't have to, because she already told me explicitly that she's introducing contrast, or it's an example, or, you know, it's an additional argument on the same topic. So it's just, as a reader, it's just so much easier to understand where she's going with this paragraph. And that's exactly what you want to be doing in your research papers. So, first of all, I prepared for you a linking words cheat sheet. And it's a PDF document. It's available for download right below this video. I'll pull it up on the screen here for you. It looks like this. There's a video which you can watch for instructions about this document and further explanation. But in a nutshell, they're all the potential linking words that you might ever want to use in writing a paper or a thesis. And then I've also got 3 pages of the most common mistakes that I've seen PhD students and researchers make. And this is based on real mistakes that real PhD students and researchers make when it comes to linking. We've worked with over 460 PhD students and researchers. So this is not something that I made up, read about in a theoretical book or something like this. This is like real stuff. And if you avoid these mistakes, like, you will get rid of 99% of mistakes with linking. So keep this handy. This is very, very important. And then we want to go back to our paragraph structure and flow worksheet. So you should have version 2 of your paragraph in here. And now you can paste version 2 in here. And then we're going to develop version 3. The way we're going to develop it is that you're going to try to add some of the linking words into your paragraph. Don't go crazy. Don't add a linking word in every single sentence. You don't necessarily need to do that, but try to add a couple of linking words to make the connections between your ideas more explicit, and also make sure that you avoid the mistakes listed here. Okay, before you send it to anybody for feedback, just go over this and make sure that you haven't made any of these mistakes. I listed them here for you for a reason, because most researchers and PhD students that we've worked with at some point made these mistakes, and I don't want you to repeat those same mistakes. So keep this handy and make sure that you get this done, okay? Because then again, we're going to use version 3 of your paragraph to improve it. So pause this video and do it right now, and I'll see you back in the presentation. So we talked about linking. That's one way of building flow within paragraphs, but there are other ways of doing it. For example, you can use pronouns like they, it, and so on. You can use relative pronouns like which, who, that, whose, and so on. And there's different ways of doing it. Like, for example, when you add necessary information about people, you can use who or that without a comma. If you're adding necessary information about things, you can use which or that. And again, you don't use a comma in here. You've got an example of that. When you're referring to the preceding clause or phrase, you need to use which, always preceded by a comma. So the entire process can take several hours, comma, which means that. Okay, so this which in here does not refer to several hours. It refers to the whole preceding idea, okay, to the whole preceding sentence or clause or whatever you want to call it, okay? And there's always a comma, and you cannot use that. You can only use which in this case. And then you use who for people and which for things, preceded by a comma when you add extra information about something that is already known. So like in this example, let's say you start a sentence with the name of the author, like you 2022, then we're going to put a comma, who studied, and then another comma when we finish that sub-sentence, and then show that, okay? Because you 2022, there's just one of that person, it's known, unique, we're adding extra information, right? We're not adding necessary information. So that's how relative pronouns work. You can also use determinants like these, another, this, and so on. And you can also use synonyms or repeat key ideas or key terms, right? For example, one challenge this creates is, and then later we can write an additional issue, and then this, we've got challenge and issue, which are kind of synonyms, okay? Well, we also have one challenge this creates, and then in the next sentence, we've got lead to. And lead to and create in this context are also synonyms, okay? So that's another way of building flow within paragraphs. Now, let's look at an example, the same paragraph that we've been looking at before, and let's see how this was done here. So we've got pronouns like they, we've got relative pronouns like which, who, then we've got those. Again, those refers to medical students. Who, so we've got, so we are defining those medical students who. There, and again, this refers back to medical students. And then we've got repetition of like keywords or synonyms like independent, independently, teamwork, which is kind of the opposite of working independently, right? So all of this helps to build really good flow within this paragraph. So again, you want to come back to the paragraph structure and flow worksheet, which we've been using. I'll pull it up here on the screen, and you want to paste your paragraph version 3, and then you want to add these other ways of building flow into your paragraph. Again, it might not be possible, well, it won't be possible probably to add all of them, but you want to add 1 or 2 to make your paragraph even better. Okay, and pause the video, do it right now. Tomorrow isn't going to be a better time to do this, so you want to do it right now, and then the next activity is going to build on the version of the paragraph that you create right now. So do it, and then I'll see you back in the presentation. So now you've got a beautiful paragraph with really good structure. What we want to do now is provide links between paragraphs, okay? Because one of the problems why, one of the reasons why PhD students or researchers don't tell a coherent story is that the links between paragraphs don't exist or aren't explicit. And then the reader has to think really hard, well, how is this paragraph connected to this paragraph? And they can't find the answer, and that breaks the coherent story that you're trying to tell. Okay, so that's why having those links is really important. How are we going to do that? Well, first of all, again, cementing your ideas together across paragraphs will create a really good structure. Okay, the one way to do it is at the end of a paragraph. You can introduce the main idea of the following paragraph. Another way to cement your ideas is at the beginning of the paragraph, right? Where you can refer back to the main idea of the previous paragraph. And then you can use different types of cement or different types of linking, such as linking words, determiners, pronouns, and synonyms or repetition of keywords. So these are basically the same type of links that we use within paragraphs. We can also use them across paragraphs. Okay, the same principles apply. Let me give you an example of this so that, to really cement your understanding, so that it's not some abstract high-level stuff, but that you actually understand what we're talking about here. So this is the first paragraph, okay, kind of like the end of the paragraph, and then this is the beginning of the second paragraph. Let's see what the writer did here. The writer repeated keywords and used synonyms to link the two paragraphs together. More specifically, in paragraph 1, they talk about reviews and they talk about geographical locations. At the beginning of paragraph 2, they talk about included reviews, so there's repetition of the keyword, and then high-income countries. And countries are really kind of a synonym for a geographical location, or there are a type, I suppose, of a geographical location, okay? And that's how, the two paragraphs are really cemented together, and there is coherent flow. Now, let's look at another example. So this is the last sentence of a paragraph, and this is the first sentence of the following paragraph. And in here, we've got linking words, and we've got repetition of key terms. So at the end of the first paragraph, the writer says competitors. And then at the beginning of the second paragraph, the writer says in addition, which is a linking word. And then we've got repetition, competitors. Okay. So again, that cements the ideas together and helps build a coherent story. So now, before we summarize, it's now over to you in the paragraph structure and flow worksheet. You've got version 4 of your paragraph, and what you want to do now is provide clear links between paragraphs. So what you want to do, you've got one paragraph and you want to start writing the next paragraph, and make sure that following paragraph is clearly linked to that paragraph that you've just written. And I've given you the ways in which you can do that, which we have just discussed as well. Okay, so pause the video and do it right now. So if you're watching this video and you want to get access to these materials that I'm showing to you right now, then you want to join our free published researcher community, and the link to do that is right in the description of this video. And then you can head to the classroom space, and there you will find the resources that I'm showing you here in this video.